I'm super excited to have my friend Matt on here to tell you his amazing story of recovery. Matt has been through some crazy, traumatic things through his journey, and I am so grateful that he is here to share his experience, strength, and hope with everyone. What's up, Matt, from out of North Carolina?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing, Jamie? I'm
I'm
good. I'm
doing
good.
great. Super excited to have
Excellent.
you on here. Now you
Excited to
are
be here.
not originally from North Carolina.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Jersey born. Lived there for many, 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 many years. Moved to Brooklyn for a while. Lived in the Bronx for a little bit. Lived in Ohio for mm, 7 years voluntarily, 6 years involuntarily, and
Gotcha.
then moved down here to North Carolina.
Yeah, I was gonna say your accent sounds very like New York Bronx, something like that.
It's funny. I've like since being here, I've picked up a lot of I guess Southern stuff. So if I talk to people from back home, they're like, "You sound like you're from the South. What happened?"
Yeah, I know, right? But to us, you still sound like you're from the North. I grew up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, so I get it. Like people are
Okay.
like, "What? You're so Southern," and it's like it's weird. But
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would
so
definitely never guess that.
yes. So let's talk a little bit about your story. So you've been on your recovery
Okay.
journey since April of 2022. Congratulations for
Yes,
that
ma'am. Thank you. Thank
accomplishment.
you.
And so let's talk a little bit about your upbringing, your childhood. Did you
Okay.
move around when you moved around all that time? Was that during your childhood or were you older?
No. So for for my childhood, well, starting out, I grew up in a two-parent household. Parents were very, very, very strict. Um, and we lived well. My parents weren't rich by any means, but I guess you could say it was a medium income household. Um, they raised me well, raised me with respect, raised me with manners, and around I guess you could say the age of 15 or so, for whatever reason, I started to change. Started doing a lot worse in school, getting in fights in school. Previously, before that, I was always doing well, always had good grades. And by the age of 16, things went really bad and ended up getting kicked out of my parents' house and went on my own ever since then. And
So, did you start like experimenting with substances at that time when you were 16 or no, just kind of behavioral stuff?
a little bit of a mix of both. So like late 15, early 16, um, it was real mild. Like it was just experiment with basically with just smoking weed and drinking. It wasn't really bad yet, not at all. It got bad. It got very bad. But things didn't really get bad till I was about 18, and I started experimenting. At that time, I started trying cocaine and fell in love with it. Fell in love with it. Cocaine, acid, was doing a lot of acid, was doing a lot of mushrooms as well, and just kept spiraling from there.
So were you at a
Started
point where
drinking.
you like employable at that time or not able to work?
Yes, yes, and yes for the most part. I always held like little, like I guess you could say, low level jobs at the time. Jobs that didn't really matter. Um, Sometimes I'd show up, sometimes I wouldn't, but I ended up supplementing my income and really didn't end up needing a job anymore. I was making money just selling everything I was using instead.
Mhm.
And
I wasn't very good at that. Were you successful in that? Because I was terrible, because I would just use it all, or I would sell it and then I'd have to buy it all back for a higher
right.
price. So
So I had bouts where I was successful. I had bouts where I was successful. Um, Sometimes I'd be successful like 6, 8 months, and then not be for 6, 8 months. Um, if I calmed my using down a little bit, which wasn't very often, I was a little more successful. Um, but around that age, I started just kind of dwelling a lot more and putting myself around a lot worse people. For some reason, I was highly fascinated with gang life. Highly fascinated with it. Started hanging around with a lot of Crips and just living that life.
so what fascinated you about that?
I really wish I could give a straight answer because I look back now and see how stupid it was and that I had no reason to have any type of fascination with it. Like I didn't grow up around it. Nobody in my family was around it. It was just the people I started placing myself around. I enjoyed the money. I enjoyed the guns. I enjoyed the recognition. I enjoyed the
Mm.
respect, and I enjoyed the fear that came from other people being part of that.
So it was kind of like a power, kind of like a ego thing.
Oh, definitely, 100%, 100%, for sure.
Gotcha. Do you think that no, because you said you were like raised in like a good household and everything. Do you
Yeah.
think that did you have brothers and sisters?
So I had, well, three brothers and two sisters. One brother recently passed last year. Um, he was a really, really bad alcoholic and he ended up passing from liver disease and cancer. And
Mm.
in 2000, December of 2000, my sister, she ended up with bone and nervous disease called RSD. It's a four-stage disease, and after the third stage, it's non-remissible. If they catch it before then, they can do what they have to do to fix it. But she didn't find out she had it until she was too late. Uh, Ended up gaining a lot of weight. She was in pain all the time. Um, for example, like she'd be holding a drink, and she like her hand would just like let it go. She couldn't hold on to things anymore. Depression set in really bad,
Mm.
and the weight gain and the pain and everything else, and she actually ended up taking her life on December 13th of 2000.
Oh,
So
I'm so
couple,
sorry.
it's okay. It still hurts today, but I mean, time makes things easier to deal with for sure. So
Mhm.
actually, I didn't even think about it. 3 days from now, it'll be 24 years.
Wow.
So
So do you think that that had anything to do with your substance use? Like you trying to maybe cover up like the trauma of that?
well, I was already using heavily at the time. Um, I would say the emotion and not wanting to feel the emotions from it definitely ramped it up 100%. But at the same time, I try not to really blame my substance use on anybody or anything, because I knew better. I just made all the bad decisions. I don't want to be like, oh, I couldn't handle the emotional pain, so I did this. It's just stupidity, man. I loved the highs from all the substances I was using, ecstasy, powder, weed, drinking, pills, everything. I loved it all.
Mm.
I loved it all. And around that time, so by the year 2000, so at that time I was say 7, 6, 8, I was 24 at that time. And I was real heavy into the gang shit at that point in time. Spending a lot of time in clubs, wearing chains, wearing rags tied around the front, hanging them from my jeans. Just and the substance use was sky high at that point in time, in more ways than one. So and all the people I were around were also users. So I wasn't placing myself around anybody good, you know. Not saying
So,
that they're all bad people,
mhm,
but just situations just kind of
right.
went hand in hand with
So, who were you living with at the time when you were kind of in like your spiral rock bottom?
it. I had a mix. I had my own place a couple of times here and there. Um, Sometimes if things got real bad, I didn't have my own place. Sometimes I had to stay with friends. Um, Sometimes, there was a few times I slept in a car. Um, Shoot, I remember a couple nights sleeping in an abandoned jail in Newark, in Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey. Um, three nights actually slept on cold concrete in an abandoned jail. Little did I know, in a few years after that, that I would actually end up in jail and 6 years in prison.
Wow.
So,
So what brought you to that?
uh, let's see. So that's quite the event. So that was in uh, that was in 2003. It was let's see, shortly after my birthday. Substance use was in full. Like that's all that mattered at that point in time. I had to wake up, use all day, go to sleep, use. I had actually moved to Ohio at that point in time, and I moved to Ohio because I had a pending case in New Jersey for possession of weed charge, and I didn't want to go do the 30 days in jail because I had messed up the probation they gave me, and I knew I was going to end up in jail for 30 days. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And I had a friend that was out in Ohio. So she's like, you can come stay here. So I was like, okay. So that was out by Cincinnati. There's a college out there called Miami University. No, no tie-ins with Miami, Florida. Um, I think they're the Miami Red Hawks. I think they were. But so I went out there and ended up finding out what these college kids were paying for their drugs, and started just seeing dollar signs. Like I'm talking about for powder, I'm talking about 10, sometimes 15 times what I would pay for
Wow.
it. So I started taking advantage of that, and I ended up linking up with somebody that lived out there and was actually going to college out there. He's like, listen, man, he said, I've got access to everybody. He's like, listen, he said, I've got a house. And he said, there's 3 bedrooms in the house. He said, it's just me. He said, come over here. He said, share the rent with me. He said, you and me are going to go into business. And I said, sounds good. So we
His
take,
college
we,
degree wasn't paying off yet.
right. Definitely not. Crazy enough, he's a doctor in Africa today. Crazy
Wow.
enough. Crazy enough.
Praise God.
Highly, highly, highly successful. Like, and it's crazy. But so we would end up going back and forth to Jersey and New York, going to the different hood spots that I had friends in and ties in, getting whatever we would need, bringing. I was never moving anything crazy big, but we get 3, 4, sometimes 5 ounces of powder, bunch of ounces of weed, and bring it back. And the money was just nuts. But also there was so much product to sell that we both started using very heavily.
Hmm.
And
And this was, of course, before you had to test all your stuff with fentanyl and xylazine test kits, right?
exactly. There was none of that at that point in time, thankfully. You know, perks and oxys were still perks and oxys.
Hmm.
Actually, they had just started putting the little real thin coating on the
The
oxys.
time
They
release.
had, exactly, they had just
Yeah.
started putting that on there, but all you had to do was get it wet and it came right off. So
So this was, you're
you're
looking at what, like 2009, 2010, something like that?
no, this is 2003. So
Oh,
this
really?
is
Okay.
before, yeah, this is before I even went to prison. So the night before, I was over at a friend's house, and me and her were hanging out, highly intoxicated. And she had received a phone call from her family in Cincinnati. Something had happened to her brother. I can't remember exactly what, but it was an emergency. And she's like, I have to get down there. I have to get down there. And it was about a half hour away from where we were. She's like, I've got to go. I was like, you can't drive. She's like, well, I'm gonna have to try. And I was like, no, I can drive. I've got it. So we got in the car, and for about for about 15, 20 minutes, I think we did okay. And going down a back road and doing 50 miles an hour, and I ended up falling asleep while I was driving across the WO line, hit another car head on. Thankfully, nobody ended up passing away, thankfully. But myself and the driver from the other car both got severely injured. Um, the passengers in both front seats, it was kind of more like a driver to driver hit.
Right.
But of course, both cars totaled, and both cars doing 50 miles an hour. That's like hitting a brick wall at 100.
Right.
So I ended up waking up 3 days later in University of Cincinnati Hospital, and I shattered my right ankle. So in my right ankle now, I've got a rod, 3 pins, 2 screws, and a wire. Fractured my C spine in 2 spots, fractured my pelvis, and I know you can't really see it on camera here, but the bone ended up coming out of my hand right here and
Wow.
just like completely separating. And the last thing I remember before I passed out after the accident was looking over at my friend. I said something to her. I said, what just happened? And then I looked down at my hands, and like when you watch a movie or a TV show and somebody gets cut and they're bleeding, it's like squirting.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite that for me. It was more like a volcanic bubble. Like as you could say, it was just like
Wow.
and I remember looking at it and I remember grabbing my bone and actually like trying to move the bone, and then I just passed out. And I woke
Oh
up 3 days later in the
gosh.
hospital. And I woke up in a hospital, and I think I stayed there one more day, woke up again the next day, and the nurses came in and they were telling me, they were like, all right, we're gonna discharge you. And I'm like, really? I said, okay. And then 2 officers came in the room, and I said, hey, you guys here to help me downstairs? And they're like, yep, we're gonna help you downstairs, and you're getting in the back of our car, and you're going to Butler County Jail. So I left the hospital and didn't end up touching the street again until 2009. Uh, I
Wow.
spent 7 months in the county, going through court and everything else. I was in the medical pod for I think 60 something days. I was in a wheelchair for 67 days.
Mm,
I also had
what
one
a
of those.
nightmare.
Oh, definitely. I had one of those things on that goes around your chest, around your back, and cups your chin because I couldn't move my neck because they were afraid if I moved my neck, I was going to end up being paralyzed. And let's see, in doing, ended up getting sentenced. And while I was in court, and I'd gone back and forth and seen the judge a couple of times, and went back for my sentencing date. And if I knew what I knew now, I would have never listened to that public defender. But he ended up telling me to plead guilty, and I did. And the judge, during her sentencing, said, she said, Mr. Morrill, she said, I need to know two things before I sentence you. She said, number one, what makes you think you can come into our state? Because mind you, I wasn't an Ohio resident at any point in time. She's like, what makes you think you can come into our state on my county roads with enough toxins in you to kill an elephant? She said, I've never seen a toxicology report like this in my life. And she said, and my mother and father died from a drunk driver. And she said, I
Oh,
sentenced you to 6 years in an Ohio State Correctional Institution. And yeah, I did. I did all of my 6 years except for 42 days. I ended up getting a good day every month. Not every month, but after I was there for a little while, I ended up getting enrolled in school. Got two college degrees, like real college degrees from real college professors, real college textbooks. Um, and took a bunch of self improvement programs and read I think it was over 500 books. I forget the exact number. I think it was like
wow.
506. um,
So you
you know,
made the
read.
best of your time.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. In the beginning, I kind of messed up a little bit. Ended up doing 108 days in the hole in segregation because I ended up getting caught smoking weed there. But
Mm,
after after that, it was all straight and narrow. I didn't do anything else. Went to go a couple of other times for some fights, but I had no choice. I had no choice. It wasn't
mhm,
me acting out or anything of that nature. It was me defending myself. Um,
right.
so left there and went to the halfway house because in Ohio they don't have parole anymore, but they have something called um, PRC, post release control. So I was also sentenced to 3 years post release control. So I was actually given a 9 year sentence, and ended up doing a year and a half on post release control. Got let go for good time, and and that was it. I was working a job, and I got a job very quickly out of prison, which was nice. Which is why anybody I hear a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I've got felonies on my record. I can't get a job." There's places that won't hire you for felonies, definitely, but you can still get jobs. You can still get jobs. I've never had an issue getting a job, which is I'm blessed and thankful for, especially for today's job because it's a mind blowing blessing. I'm very grateful for it. But ended up at that point in time, I worked at a job at a call center, and I met a female there, and things went well. Um, we actually ended up living together for a little over 6 years. Um, they basically married without actually being married,
Mhm.
and the last year of our relationship, I started back on powder, and
Mm. Was it relationship stuff that, or were you just bored, or did you just run into somebody, or like what happened? Like, how do you just,
I think a combination of all three. I
uh
mean,
huh.
it started with running into somebody, and finding out what they had, and spending time over their house and doing it, and then things weren't working out real well with the relationship. It wasn't necessarily me and her. Things weren't real bad between me and her, but between me and her son. When I
Hmm.
moved into the house, he was 12, and when I left the house, he was 18. So from the time he was about 16 to when I left the house, it was almost constant war between her and him, and then me trying to defend her and getting in the middle of it, and then things went real sour between me and him. Um, and it just didn't work out, and then it got to a point where I couldn't explain where close to $10,000 had went, and I just gave it up. I was like, I mean, she already knew, but I gave it up, and she's like, listen, she's like, it's over, and I was like, I know. So. I ended up calling my cousin who lives here in North Carolina, and a few months before that, I had actually came to North Carolina because she knew I was using it. And I was supposed to take a break and get away from the people and end up being good and go back and everything was going to be okay. Well, I went back and went right back to it, right back to
Right.
it. Turned it up a notch and went hard. And she knew. So I called my cousin. I was like, "Listen, it's over." And she was like, "All right, come on." So came down here and ended up staying with her. She had an extra room in the house. And I grew up with her, and that's my best friend. Period. Point blank. There's not a thing in my life that she doesn't know about. Literally nothing. That's my best friend to today and forever. But so I came down here. There was some ground rules. Listen, man, you got to stay clean. You got to do what you got to do, and get a job, and handle your business like you're supposed to at your age. I came down to North Carolina end of 2016. And I was like, okay, and I was doing good for a little bit. Then I ended up the job I ended up getting. I was actually a cook in a steakhouse here, and same scenario, man. Ended up putting myself around the wrong people, And one night I got offered some powder and was all it was off to the races again, and
Mm,
it spiraled real bad, like worse than ever, worse than ever. It was just constant. Um, I ended up, putting myself around and meeting a whole bunch of people that I could get different stuff from, and I was partying with them, and going to barbecues and more parties, and I was basically just getting by. And my cousin knew, but I just kept lying to her. I just kept lying to her. She didn't have any complete evidence, but when I ended up starting having money issues and wasn't able to cover my part of the bills, and
mhm.
I always had some excuse that sounded real good. It sounded real good in
Right.
my head. But she knows the game, and she knew exactly what was going on. So uh, that ended up not working out either. Um, it put a huge strain on our relationship, and then I ended up meeting meeting another girl at the steakhouse, and we ended up in a relationship for a year and a half. We ended up living somewhere together, and I uh, I was receiving a script of Percocets from a doctor up in Ohio, and that ended up running out. Like I couldn't get him to refill them anymore without me actually being in Ohio and going to the office and seeing them. So let's see that between the powder and the perks, it was bad. It was bad. I'd be coming down off the powder and I'd be using the perks to try to like calm myself down, basically.
Mhm.
And oops, sorry, phone started calling. But then I ended up finding a connection with what I thought were you know oxy 30s. I really thought they were. They looked just like them. They had the M on them. They had the 30 on them. And I was like, man, these are great. Man, these are getting me way more messed up than I remember Oxy's ever getting me messed up. Well, it's because it was fentanyl. And
Okay.
and ended up turning the girl I was with at the time onto him. And she didn't have any drug issues before me. She had no drug issues before me. And Ended up turning her on to him, and it wasn't long before it was a full blown fentanyl addiction for both of us, and that's
Mhm.
all that mattered at that point in time. Every every dollar that came in, it was all about calling somebody to get the blue 30s. Got to call somebody to get the
Right.
blue 30s. Making 20, 30, 40 minute drives every day to go get these. Buying three, four, 10 at a time. Sometimes making two, three trips in a day. And at first I was just doing a half of one because I was kind of scared of doing the whole one. And then I was doing the whole one. And then I wouldn't do less than the whole one. And I was doing two at a
Right.
time. And it's exactly how it goes. And it
Mhm.
got real bad. It got real bad. And then just kind of fast forward a little bit to February of 2022. Me and a girl in a relationship. She's at work. We're living in the house together. The house we're living in, there's no trash pickup in that township. It's a country town out here in North Carolina. There's no trash pickup. You got to take everything to the dump. Shortly after Christmas, there was still a bunch of bags with wrapping paper in them and cardboard boxes from toys for my children and everything else. Um, so I took it out to the backyard to burn it. Burning it, and fire's going good. Two bags roll off of the fire, and I grab the longboard and I go to push these two bags back onto the fire. And as soon as I move those bags, there was like a loud explosion. Um, I watched a stream of fire shoot up the board, and it all hit me. It all hit me. Like all the plastic from those bags and everything that was inside of them, and just the flames that shot up the board. I went up in flames, and I was covered in everything, and I literally started melting.
Oh.
I looked down and looked at my chest, and I was watching flames shoot up and hit me in the face. So for some reason, I remembered a grade school adage of stop, drop, and roll, and that's what I did. And I put myself out, and I got up, and my shirt was melted off, my jacket that I had on was melted off, and I looked down and I saw a literal hole in my chest. I could see my chest plate. And I looked at my hands and I was watching skin melt off of my hands. And I'm looking around for my phone, looking for my glasses. I couldn't find anything. And I'm yelling, like screaming, like somebody help me. But there's really nothing around. Houses are an eighth of a mile, a quarter mile apart. And so somehow I managed to get inside the house. I grabbed my car keys, got in the car, and drove myself to the firehouse. It was about a quarter mile down the road, but as I'm going to get in the car, I'm like, man, I can't really see. I can't drive like this. And I thought it was because I didn't have my glasses on. But I went to go feel for my glasses, and I'm like, no, those aren't there. And I'm like, what is this? And I just started kind of pulling. I was like, man, what is this? And I started pulling, and I literally kept just going like this, and I stopped right here, and I just yanked, and I pulled it down, and it was almost like a perfect circle of skin. Yeah.
Oh my
So
goodness.
in all retrospect, like really kind of just peeled some of my face off, I guess. And
Wow.
yeah, so drove myself to the firehouse, and I'm banging on the door, and nobody's coming to the door. It was a volunteer firehouse. It wasn't, like somebody's there all the time. Um,
Right.
Again, real small town, but an older gentleman came out from the house across the street, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I turned around to him. I was like, "I need help." I said, "I'm burning alive." I said, "I'm going to die." And then hmm, sorry, but shortly after that, I don't know how long it was, but ambulance showed up, and they took me to a hospital in Greenville, North Carolina, and got in the hospital and got wheeled into the room. And I remember the nurse saying to me, she's like, Matt, she's like, we got to put you to sleep. She said, we got a lot of work to do. And I was looking up at her and she had a gas mask in her hand. And I remember reaching up and grabbing that gas mask and pulling it over my face. And, and I woke up 3 days later in Chapel Hill in UNC Burn Clinic, like one of the very top, if not the top burn clinic in the nation. And a lot of I've shown that picture that I showed you today to a lot of people, and I've got others, but somehow they ended up turning me from that back into this. I don't know how, but I spent 2.5 weeks on life support, on a feeding tube, tube down my nose, going to the bathroom through tubes, and after I was really just really, really incoherent for probably two of those weeks, and started coming to a little bit better. And my cousin ended up coming to visit me, and yeah, she told me that the doctors told her to go ahead and make plans because I wasn't gonna make it. But 36 days later, I walked out of there, and pretty convinced I'm a cat because like I car wreck, you know, coding out in the car wreck, and you know, death with the fire, and still being there. Like I've got to be on like 4 or 5 by now, and I don't know how, but
God definitely had other plans for
yeah,
you.
definitely for sure, and that's part of the questions I want to ask you at a different time. But so left the hospital. Had nowhere to go. Had nowhere to go because the house that the girl I was with, uh, she actually everybody in her life ended up finding out that she was using too, and her husband had told her that if because she was separated, she was still married, but she was separated. Well, me and her were together. And he had ended up telling her, he's like, listen, he's like, I'm gonna take you to court and you're gonna lose the kids. And so she ended up going back home, just to be present for the kids, to give their marriage another try, whatever it may have been. So I got left in the hospital, ended up single while in the hospital. It was, the relationship was trash anyway, because it was built on not necessarily built on drug use, but we just weren't good for each other at the time, and my use just continued. Yeah, I was away from powder for 36 days, but I was on every single painkiller possible in the hospital, and came out, and it didn't stop. For some reason, I went right back to it. Went right back to it, and this was end of April. I went to go grab some fentanyl pills and couldn't find any. But somebody I'd gotten in touch with has some heroin. And for some reason, even though I was fentanyl addict, for some reason I was like, man, I don't know, man, heroin, that's bad. Like, I don't. But I ended up getting it anyway. I didn't have anything else. I needed something. So I'm sitting in the parking lot at the store, and my cousin's daughter is married to a police officer who lives in the township. Who's a police officer in the township that I live in. and works on the narc squad. So his job is to drive around in undercover cars and find find shit.
Mhm.
So he drives by a convenience store in the middle of the hood out here and sees my car sitting there. And he's with his partner and they go down the street, sat and watched somebody come up to my car, drop the heroin in there, watched the money come out the window, or actually no, there was no money. I think I just cashed that. But drove away and about a mile later I got pulled over. Um, ended up saying I ain't got nothing, I ain't got nothing. Um, and there's more to that story, but he looked at me when I seen that dude get out of the truck, like I kind of felt like my life was over. I was
Yeah.
like, man, and it's
Busted.
crazy, busted because it's crazy because I would always, every time I would get pulled over in the township, I would always use his name. I'd be like, hey, call so and so because he'll tell you I'm good. I'm a good guy. And he'll tell you I'm good. And
Mhm.
so after I got pulled over, his partner was the one that came up to my car. They opened up my door. He's like, "Come on, man, get out." I was like, "Hey, man, just so you know, call so and so." Well, I get out of the car and I look back at the truck, and so and so got out the fucking truck,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Man," I tried telling him I didn't have nothing but some weed in the car, and he knew I was lying. He said, "Man," he said, "Listen, man," he said, "we're gonna find whatever it is you got. Just make it easy." So I went in my sock and pulled out the used bag, the straw I was using, and the other bag that still had the rest of the stuff in it, and handed it to him. Uh, Took me to jail. Ended up getting bonded out a couple hours later, and of course I'm a full blown opioid addict at this point, and I got no choice. So I ended up getting something, and you know, going back to the hotel I was living in, and ended up getting a phone call from my job, and it was the union leader. He said, "Matt," he said, "what's going on?" I said, "Nothing, man. Why? What's up?" He'd never called my phone before, ever. I said, "Why? What's up?" He said, he said, "Everybody knows." He said, "You're in the newspaper." He said, "You're online." He said, "You're on Facebook, everything."
Oh.
He said, he said, he said, "I can save your job." He said, "They can't fire you." He said, "But you got to get in the rehab right now." He said, "Not
Mm.
now, right now." He said, "Union rules, they have to give you a chance." So it took me 2 days of real effort, real effort. I wasn't putting it off. It took me 2 days of real effort to get into Wilmington Treatment Center, and ended up put myself in there on April 30th of 2022, and been clean ever since. Been clean
Wow.
ever since, and came out of there. um, didn't really have a lot, but I had a little bit of money. I was getting short-term disability checks from work that were building up while I was in treatment center. Um, so I ended up staying in like in an extended suites hotel for a little bit, and then I was talking to somebody from work, and they had an extra room in their house, so I was able to go stay there for a while. And you know where Rocky Mount's at? I'm sure you do.
Mhm.
Rocky Mount is it's a pretty shitty town. There, the nickname for it is Murder Mount. So
Okay.
just didn't like being there at all, and I was there for a couple months, but I was doing some research and ended up moving into another house that I share with some other people right now. um we shared a whole house. Everybody pays equally, and things are good. And the job I've got right now is absolutely beautiful, absolutely amazing. I don't know how I got it. I'm thankful for it. Um, I spend pretty much all of my days today. I do nothing but go to work. Um, I come home, involve myself in different recovery things. I stay very active in Wilmington Treatment Center stuff. I'm actually going down there to an alumni Christmas party this coming weekend, which I'm really looking forward to. Um, I'm very, very active in the community and outreach, help people get into rehabs. You know who the Hopeaholics are? The YouTube podcast. Are you
I
familiar
feel
with
like
them?
I've heard of that.
um, they're kind of a big deal in the recovery community. They're based out of California. But through them and through other places, I'm able to help get people a lot of help today. Um, and then I've got friends in recovery, that if they're going through stuff, they call me for recovery advice. Like I was like, what? Calling me for recovery advice? Okay.
Mhm.
And I talk them through whatever they need to be talked through. Um, I don't put myself around any of the people that I used to put myself around. My circle's real, real, real small today, and that's okay. That's okay.
Mhm.
I'm all right with that. The friends that I do have, they're real friends. You know, I know I can call them if they need me, or I know I can call them if I need them. Um,
Mhm.
and I've shown very well that they can call me if they need me. I've involved myself heavily with Nicole's recovery group on Facebook. Shout out
Love
to Nicole
Nicole,
Fluger, man.
yes.
She's awesome, man. Shout out to Nicole Fluger, man. Discovering recovery with Nicole. If anybody's not part of it, jump on Facebook, man. Uh, she asked me to be an admin for her group, and just the following's growing, and I get to reach out and help people through there. It's beautiful, and I get to lead meetings today, and just be, I've gained trust back from my family. I'm sure I'm sure somewhere in their minds there's always that little bit of, you know, kind of reservation, which especially like with my cousin, I can't blame you. I was active for 28 years, Jamie.
Mhm.
I'm 48, so I was doing bad longer than for more than 50% of my life.
Right.
But coming up on 1,000 days here, real soon, a couple of weeks away from that, and that
Awesome.
feels real good. 3 years will be here in April, and just every day, I just watch life get better. And if I'm not involving myself in recovery, I go to my family's house and I hang out with my two besties. Um, I call them my two besties. They're my cousin's daughters. One is 6 and one is 3. Um, they're my world for sure. And definitely one of my biggest, I guess you could say, pushes to stay sober.
Right.
Not only because I can never imagine going back to that life, but losing them, I'd be no good anymore. No good anymore. And I almost did. Almost did. And
Mhm.
thank my higher power for making the way for me. I'm successful today. Successful today. I just bought my first recently, a couple months ago. Just bought my first new car in sobriety with legal money, which is crazy.
Very
I've had
nice.
I've had new cars before. I've had new cars before, but either wasn't sober or wasn't with legal money or both. um, and Dude, I spent a lot of time playing the stock market and cryptos and just, gaining different knowledge on different aspects and making sure that, I have more than one stream of income and making sure I'm always there for anybody who needs me. And most
Hmm.
importantly, making sure I'm there for myself. Making sure I'm there for myself because I can damn sure look myself in the mirror today and smile. And
So important.
that's a big blessing, definitely.
Absolutely.
And I need anybody who's watching, anybody who's listening, I need them to know that I've literally, literally been this door's been wide open, and I've had my foot and my body all the way in, and just everything I've survived, everything I've gone through, emotional tragedies that have happened to me that I've taken myself out of, that I've put myself in. I need people to know, man, that recovery is possible. Recovery is
Yes.
possible. Um, Unfortunately, it's not going to happen till you're ready for it to happen. Because I had people beg, scream, cry, yell, all the things, and none of it did good. None of it did any good till I was ready.
Hmm.
And thankfully, I was ready before I spent the rest of my life in prison or dead.
Yeah. Praise God.
And
Seriously.
definitely, recovery is real possible, man. And if I can make it, Jamie, anybody can. Anybody can.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking back. I'm not looking back. It's nothing but up from here,
Wow. Well, thank you so much. So this was, man, what
man.
a like emotional like roller coaster. Like this is just so wild.
Yeah,
All of the things that you've been through. You're such a intense story. I mean, impactful to like help so many people. So thank you so much
definitely. And
for your
I love
boldness and
helping
really,
people.
yeah, for like the detail that you shared. I mean, that is like, wow, that is just incredible that you like remember like so much detail about it and, are able to like share that with
Yeah,
people because, wow, you'll probably write a book pretty soon.
I was thinking about that, or a movie. I'm pretty sure the movie would sell pretty damn good too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna end the
Definitely.
stream here. Matt, where can
Right.
people find you if they wanna follow you to hear more? Like, do you have any recovery content out there or anything, or
um,
where can they find you if they need help?
I as far as like recovery content, like I've done some mental health awareness and stuff on TikTok. Let's see, I don't even know what my so how about this? If you're okay with this, um, when this ends, like people can easily find you on Facebook because your
Yeah,
Facebook's
you
very
can
easy
put
to
it in the
find.
comments
But
if you want.
yeah, in the comments, or you can go to my Facebook, Matt Morrill, Morrill. If anybody needs help, man, please shoot me a message. Um, I don't mind helping. My DMs are open to help anybody any day. Just please don't ask me
Hmm.
for money.
Yeah.
Just please don't ask me for money. A lot of people do that, and you know, I have to turn them
That's
down often because I know why they want it. But
well, that's a hard thing. I'll be like, I work 3 jobs. Can I have some money?
right,
When people ask,
right,
you know what I mean?
for
Like
sure.
I'm trying, man.
Mm,
That's rough out here.
right,
But
definitely.
yeah, but thank you so much. We're gonna end the stream. Forced issue. I see you. We're doing a different show right now. So but I'll get with you. Send me an email, jamietalcoaching@gmail.com. Okay. And so we're going to end the stream. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Anybody who
Thank you,
wants to come and
Jamie.
share their testimony, you're very welcome. Feel free to put it in the comments, or you can email me, and I will talk to you soon.